Welcome to Beyond the Headlights,
where we turn our pain into purpose
and raise our voices against drunk driving. I'm Destiny.
And I'm Jennifer. And on today's podcast, we're going to talk about two more cases that have been recent in the news concerning drunk driving. And the one that I'm going to talk about wasn't super recent. It was actually 2013. But it's a very interesting story with a lot of details. I've actually watched two separate documentaries on this. This issue.
Back before kids, I used to watch documentaries all the time, but now it's Bluey and Peppa and all of the above.
Yeah,
so
someday. All right. So Ethan Couch, he was named the Affluenza Teen. So to break that down, like influenza is a virus, and affluency, having a lot of wealth and not having to want for anything, is also a virus. And
one could dream of that.
I know,
what a
right?
terrible thing to have.
Well, it was funny because I'll go off script for real quick right off the bat. But when I was a preschool teacher, so where our center was located, it was in a more affluent area. Okay. And so way, way back, probably 20 years ago, we started saying there was a problem with affluency that maybe other areas were not having. They had different issues, but our problem was people not being able to tell their kids no, and not setting boundaries for their kids, and buying them anything that they wanted instead of what they needed.
It's wild for me to even fathom something that like that could be a form of parenting. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I feel like that's your sole job as a parent.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Because you're training them in how they should be when they grow up. So boundaries are a good thing. Saying no is a good thing.
Accountability.
Not buying them everything is a good thing. So this teenager was 16 when this crime happened. Okay. And the reason, so his defense team actually they coined this phrase, and they actually used it in his defense, saying they convinced the judge that his privileged upbringing essentially prevented him from knowing right from wrong. And he was released from jail after he ended up getting a 10-year sentence. He only served like a day of jail time.
Wow.
He got a 10-year probation, and then he wrecked it.
But that takes me back to the argument of, if he wasn't capable of making good choices because of how he was brought up, did they release him back to his parents?
They did, yeah. So I'll tell the story because there's a funny ending to it. So not funny. We laugh at inappropriate ironic, things, maybe. I guess. Yeah. So it, again, going back to the victims, I'm going to say their names first, and then we'll talk about him. But Brian Jennings was a local youth pastor and father of 3. Brianna Mitchell was the driver of the stranded car. She was 24. She's the car that pulled over first that started this chain of events. And then Holly and Shelby Boyles, they lived actually right where the car broke down. They came out to see if the driver needed help. And the 4 of them died that night. So going back to how it all started, Holly and Shelby were inside their house with their dad. It was the night before Father's Day, dad and husband, night before Father's Day. And Shelby was home from school for for summer, maybe. Okay. And they were curled up on the couch watching a movie together as a family. Yeah. Then they heard a noise outside. It was Brianna Mitchell's car had spun out. She wasn't drinking and driving. She just, for whatever reason, her car spun out and broke down in the ditch. So all of them actually went outside initially, the father included, but she had knocked down the mailbox. So he picked up the mailbox and walked it back to the garage, and they had a longer driveway. So it just left the mom and daughter out by the road with Brianna. The youth pastor got involved because there was a graduation party. They had rented or borrowed the chairs and tables from the church. So he and 2 younger boys, his godsons, were in the truck with him when they saw Brianna's car broke down. So they stopped to help.
Doing what's right.
So the 4 of them were out by the road when Ethan Couch was just a few houses down having a party. He was actually living in his parents' second home by himself. And so he had people over, friends over for beer pong and shots of Everclear. So they were drinking heavily.
Yeah.
And one of the girls that was with them that night needed something from the convenience store. Ironically, she was the only sober kid in the crowd, and she needed something. So they were going to jump in Ethan's souped up, giant, expensive pickup truck. There were 8 of them, so 6 inside the cab, the extended cab, and then 2 in the bed of the truck. And all the kids said that Ethan shouldn't drive because he was intoxicated, but he drove anyway. And so they went down the road. He accelerated to 70 on this small road, and he clipped Brianna's SUV that was broke down. Again, it was like in the ditch. Clipped it, lost control a little bit, and basically, not to be graphic, but truth is, he plowed down the 4 people: Brian Jennings, Brianna Mitchell, Holly, and Shelby Boyles. Then the truck flipped over. It hit the pickup truck of Brian Jenkins, the youth pastor who had the 2 young boys in the pickup truck waiting for him. Hit that truck, flipped over. All the kids from his pickup truck flew out, and the 2 boys that were in the youth pastor's truck were seriously injured, but they were okay. Then in the meantime, the dad that lived in the house heard the commotion, ran back to the road. There were 14 victims. So 14 people all over the road, chairs and tables from the graduation party. The trucks just accordioned, crumpled up, like crushed up cans. And then because of the graduation party, everybody had to go that route to get home. So the 2 boys that were in the youth pastor's truck pulled up first, started doing CPR on the youth pastor. Then the youth pastor's wife pulled up. So it was just compounded layer upon layer of tragedy.
And this goes back to the ripple effect. You know, it's not just the person that like is killed or hurt. Like there's so many more people involved.
This was 14 people all over the road. And so the moral of the story, I'll tell about the court case in a second, but the 4 people died on the road: Brianna, Brian, Holly, and Shelby. But 2 of Ethan's friends that were in the bed of the pickup truck were seriously injured. One has since recovered. The other cannot speak and cannot move from paralysis. So he's not the same kid he was before. The 2 kids that were in the youth pastor's truck were banged up, but they were okay. And obviously the dad, the husband, homeowner, had no injuries because he was far enough away.
The trauma that they will carry with them till the end of time from witnessing that.
And the dad had to find his wife. He found his daughter.
Son-in-law.
And there was nothing that could be done to help them. He knew that they were already gone. So it was all preventable, which is what this all comes back to.
Just a choice. Like, your choices matter, and that is whether or not you're getting in a car, like sober or not, or just picking up a mailbox and walking back to the driveway. Had he not done that, he could have been gone too. I don't know.
Yeah, very true.
Just
very true.
Thought-provoking.
And in our last episode, we've talked about going down that rabbit hole of what if. And I think, what if the youth pastor had not stopped? If he saw the accident, called 911, went on through, he's alive. But that's not he was doing the right thing.
He was doing who he was.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And what if the first car had not spun out for whatever reason it did? And then none of them would have been hurt. Well, then you don't know, because Ethan was very, very drunk. So after hearing the whole case, this happened down in Texas, and the judge decided that he should only get 10 years probation after hearing the psychological testimony that Ethan Couch, the 16-year-old, was just spoiled and wealthy, and that his upbringing impaired his ability to understand his consequences of his actions.
So because I'm not well off, I can.
Right. And then the argument goes back to, is 16 too young to have a driver's license? Because affluence is kind of in our culture now. This was in 2023, and I would say it's gotten worse since then. So is affluence a good enough reason to raise the age of a driver's license? Because if he was not capable of making good choices at 16, would this have changed if he was 18?
Well, that and the way that we raise our families is different than it was even 20 years ago. You know what I mean?
It is.
It requires 2-parent households to survive financially these days. So parents are working more and more, usually till like 5 or 6 in the evening.
We have a lot of activities after school.
Everyone's so busy. Families aren't really eating dinner at the dinner table like they once did.
Right.
Moms aren't in the house as much as they once were, and these kids are kind of getting a free-for-all. So, you know, like, unfortunately, it's just the way things are, but I think all of that does lead up to maybe we should reconsider the age.
Or reconsider our parenting, you know, and maybe it starts at home, and maybe we just do a better job of training our kids to right and wrong and making sure they understand that. And they won't learn it by putting a tablet in front of their face.
Yeah, I know.
And they won't learn it by watching a show. Like, you actually have to have conversations and teach them. And sometimes that means discipline. And discipline is not abuse, but like maybe taking away a treat or not buying so many toys.
I'm very much a tablet mom, but I'm also like a strict tablet mom.
Yeah,
because
there's appropriate
Cohen,
times.
my 7-year-old, he can be tablet obsessed like most 7-year-olds, but he only gets smart shows, learning shows, and he thinks it's the worst ever, but he's the smartest kid because of it.
Well, and maybe don't give them the tablet when they're having a meltdown, because that kind of reinforces bad behavior.
Well, he ended up having one time where he chose to stay up all night. I get that he's 7, but he stayed up all night long and on his tablet when I took it away on a school night. And so I had a conversation with his teacher, and I was like, hey, I kind of have to prove a point to show him that we still have to go do the next day, but if he's too tired, let me know, I'll come get him, kind of thing. And I stayed in contact with her, and he was he was just tired. However, it happened 2 weeks before school was over again for a second time, and after that first time, I let him know, bud, like, if you do this again, the TV's coming off the wall, which is the worst thing that could ever happen to that poor kid, and you're not getting your tablet. So he went 2 weeks with no TV until the last day of school, and now he, like, I don't think he'll do it again.
Well, it's healthy to teach consequences. It's healthy to teach boundaries. And like, you would be feeling as a parent if you let him do it every single night and just said, well, he wants to.
He wants to.
Yeah.
It also taught me, though, when he didn't have his TV or tablet, like, how much more present, like, I'm already a really present mom, but like how much more present I could be if I didn't have those distractions, because we played trains so much than like we would have before. Like, I sat down and played with him because he needed some more entertaining, and he colored so much more, and he played with his sister so much more. So we have still, since he has gotten it back, limited a ton, because it's just better for him.
It is. It's better for the whole family. During COVID, we did something similar. We had bought this property that was kind of out of the way.
Nice.
And we didn't have cell phone service there. So that was the draw, because at the time I had 3 teenagers. So the draw was, if we buy this place, we spend the time as a family without distractions, and we play board games or cards or talk, you know. And then COVID happened, and it turned into, okay, well, now instead of tent camping on this property, we're going to build a cabin together, and you're going to learn real life skills. You're going to learn how to use a saw and measure. And our youngest is a homeschool kid, so everything was like a learning opportunity. So it was important. But I learned so much about the kids during, and not just that, but I think they learned a lot about us too.
Yeah.
Because how often do people say, gosh, I just wish I could go back as an adult and have conversations with my grandparents or whoever that's not here anymore. And I think today I notice a lot of, well, I think I told you when I was having Cole fill out his form for the doctor, he didn't know my birth date, my middle name, my he didn't know.
Sometimes I wonder if my husband even knows all that.
He
didn't know his mom.
Any of his health conditions. You know, like
so cute.
He asked if he had diabetes, and he said, "You would know if you had diabetes."
As he's probably eating like a Debbie cake or ice cream cone or something.
Right. Well, the one thing that he does have, and I won't say it to respect his privacy, but he didn't check that box. And I was like, but you do have that. And he goes, no, I don't. And I said, yes, you do. Just because it's in remission doesn't mean you don't have it. So you do have to mark it, but he wouldn't.
You act like he's going to listen to our podcast.
I'm
joking.
No, well, the other day, I should say this, right before we went on air, he had called me and I said, hey, I have to go. We're getting ready to do the podcast. And he goes, what? You have a podcast?
Yeah, I'm pretty cool. I'm a cool mom.
I'm like, yeah, we've been doing this for a couple months. Thanks for paying attention to my life.
My husband will listen to YouTube podcasts as loud as the phone can go. That's a pet peeve. But anyways, he'll listen to them and he hasn't listened to ours. He's like, I already know what you're saying. I know this story. I could say it myself. I was like, I don't care. You still need to watch. You're going to go subscribe. So we have one more subscriber. And I have a breakout on my face. Fun being a girl and an adult. And I was telling him, I was like, gosh, I got to put on 8 pounds of makeup to not look like this. And he's
but the cameras are
they
over
can't
here.
See. Ha. You don't get to see it either. Anyways, so I was telling him, he's like, well, now you'll only have 19 subscribers you'll have to hide it from, not 20, because he doesn't listen. I was like, all out of love.
But how did he know we have 19?
Because he subscribed the other day when I asked him if he listened. But I won't let him listen to our podcast in front of me because I don't want to hear myself in front of other people. But
I think Tom has listened to one.
Yeah, and he listened to half of the first one.
It was really good.
7 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're
PR
already
support and hype us up. Please.
Yeah, and if you're already to this point, you know that we sometimes do laugh. It's not always sad. There's some silly
I think
stuff.
We're pretty cool. We're not just sad people.
Yeah. We get off topic a lot, but
Hot Mess Express.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyways, tell me about this kid.
Yes. Anyway, so the ironic thing was the judge ordered the boy to have court-mandated rehabilitation since he didn't know right from wrong. He had the 10 years of probation, but he also had to do this rehab thing. But the kicker was Texas taxpayers had to pay for it because the parents were found financially unable to pay.
What?
Even though they were so affluent. So
that and this is another take too. It's if he made these choices because he was so affluent and his parents gave him this best life but didn't hold him accountable, why aren't we holding the parents accountable then for not doing their job as a parent?
Exactly. And in my situation, but in my situation, I felt the same way after the crash because they were between 15 and 18 years old. And I am still very angry at the parents.
Yeah. And I get that you can't control or know necessarily where your kids are every second of every day. But I feel with the apps that we have these days with Life 360 or Find My iPhone or anything.
All of it.
When you as a parent are paying for your kid's phone, you do have access to their phone and you are their parent. You have access to their web.
And when your kids are posting things on all the social media of what they're doing and you're not checking on your kids and seeing those things on their social media, then you're at fault for not keeping track of them.
I feel if it was blatantly obvious what your kid was doing and you chose to look the other way to be a fun, cool parent, I think there should be some accountability there because maybe it would make us parent just a little more carefully.
I agree. Well, wait till you hear what happens with the parents, or at least the mom. Okay, so this sentence angered so many, rightfully so,
right.
But not just the victim's family, but also drunk driving activists, like it would have angered us at the time. But also Mothers Against Drunk Driving got involved because they were very outraged by it too. But in 2015, so 2 years later, a video surfaced of Ethan partying again, playing beer pong again.
This reminds me of another local case.
It sure does.
Everyone will know.
Yep. So this was in violation of probation, obviously. So instead of meeting with his probation officer, he had quit doing that as well. He and his mother, Tanya, decided they would make headlines again by disappearing, and they ran to Mexico, Tijuana.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they had no financial means to pay for this rehab themselves.
Right.
Okay.
Right. They only had financial means for fancy trucks and alcohol, apparently, and I'm being sarcastic. I don't know
they
what
knew where to like pile that money.
But they eventually, this is funny, they eventually tracked them down, officials did, because one of them ordered Domino's pizza down in Mexico from their cell phone.
That would be how I got caught, okay? I like me some Wingstop and DoorDash. Like, that's how you're catching me.
Yep. So they found them, and it ended up giving Ethan a 2-year sentence for violating his probation. So this all sparked a big debate about our country's justice system and if there are steps that clients can take to this is how it's worded on this paper. So I'm not saying I agree with this term, but how we could prevent ourselves from raising entitled brats.
As mine repeatedly FaceTimes me on her tablet at 4 years old, and I keep declining her calls. She's like, just ready, like, Mom, talk to me. Anyways, tell me how to do that.
Do you want to pause and answer?
No, I don't.
Okay. So the erratic conduct exhibited by Couch was also exactly the type that Spendthrift clauses and other trust provisions seek to prevent. So just to simplify that, if your kid is already exhibiting troubling behavior like addiction or substance abuse, I think that there should be some way of preventing a driver's license.
Yeah.
If they've already shown poor decision-making skills. And I'm not saying that this even goes back to grades because...
Or the interlock system. Why aren't we putting those on all kids' cars? Just to be safe.
Right.
It would keep them
And maybe
safe.
it would make their insurance lower. But I think that, there are safety measures in place for gun owners. Like if you have been convicted of drug or alcohol abuse, or if you've done time for some other crimes, if you have a felony, you can't own a gun. A car is a deadly weapon, and I think it needs to be thought of as that. I think if our policies were different, this could have changed the whole outcome because he wouldn't have a driver's license. Now, going back to what we talked about before, like if he doesn't have a driver's license, does that mean he won't drive? Probably not. But it's a good example of why we need to take parenting seriously.
Yeah.
So once he got back home, his mom actually had to do time too. So he was sentenced for 2 years.
Because she took him out of the country.
She had to serve 2 years as well. And it brought up an interesting point. So this was a very, very big case in 2013 and 2015. In 2013, because of the number of people that were involved, the 14 victims, but then also with the attorneys calling it affluenza. That's just one of those weird things that people pick up on, and they're like, oh, maybe I'll look into the story.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous that they would say that was the reason that he couldn't make good choices. But then in 2015, because his mom took him out of the country and hid him in Mexico, so it became a big deal. He kind of became the most hated teen in the country. So at that time he was 18. But it brings up an interesting question, and it goes back to how we parent. Would you protect your child from the public wrath if he became the most hated 18-year-old in the country? At what point do you kick him to the wolves, sort of, and say, you did this, you have to pay the price, or do you protect them? And obviously the way he was raised is protection.
Forth, though, because like it would be one thing if he was remorseful and this was like a one and done kind of thing, and he wasn't living this wild life, but like if it was something that continued to happen, like you got to face your consequences. But then also as a parent, you have to reflect on yourself and look at the way you're parenting. Like, was it partially your fault that he did what he did?
Right.
Like, did you show him that this was okay?
Yeah. And had they responded differently to him behind, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but why was a 16-year-old living in their family's second house unsupervised? Like, at what point did the parents think that was a wise choice to leave him unsupervised? Because as you know, Grace was killed by teenagers who were at an unsupervised party at a 16-year-old's parents' house.
I think oftentimes parents, like I know, like just back from when like I was a teen, I did things that like I probably wouldn't let my kids do. So for instance, like I lived with Corey when I was 15 years old. I moved into his house. Yeah. But it went back to the fact that like my mom, like no bad feelings or anything. Like, it made me happy in the moment. But as a mom now, like, I get it. She was working all the time. She didn't want to fight with me over it. Sure. You know what I mean? Teenagers are relentless. Like, they will just keep going and going. And I'm sure that I wasn't the easiest person to deal with when wanting to spend the night. But slowly that led to me spending the night. And I eventually just basically lived there because I quit coming home. Yeah. So, like, teens, like, they are pushy. But I think that you have to just be stronger and know that it's for their own good. And they're not going to hate you forever. Like, they're going to grow into adults and understand why you did what you did and thank you later. But
it is the most important job you'll ever have in your life, to raise children. And if you don't take it seriously, bad things happen.
You could create somebody who's like super successful and powerful, or like a menace to society.
Right.
You know, like.
Right. And I say this during victim impact panels. But between the four of them, so Grace at 23, the driver at 16, the passenger at 18, and the two backseat passengers at 15 and 16, between them, they could have come up with a cure for cancer. They could have won Nobel Peace Prizes. Like, you just don't know what their future held. Or don't even go that big. Just go down to... maybe they would have just been amazing parents who raised amazing kids. What if they had amazing kids
that went on to do incredible things? Or what if they changed the trajectory of, like, their future families? You know, like, it's hard to say.
Right. I think that they're going back to 2013 to now. I think there's definitely a disconnect in kids' behaviors, and whether it's tablets or phones or whatever. We just had a conversation the other night about how the night of Grace's crash, a lot of the kids found out because it was on Snapchat. They were actually taking Snapchats of the fire and sending it out into the world.
They didn't realize the gravity of the situation and how long lasting and impactful it is.
And it almost makes me think, and I'm not a child psychiatrist or anything.
I don't know. I have a Google PhD in a lot of things. I'm joking.
Right? No, but it does make you wonder, though, if they are so disconnected from reality because they have grown up with TV and they have grown up with tablets and phones and all of those things at their fingertips, and maybe they just don't, because I have struggled with that since I found out that they were Snapchatting the fire.
Like, I grew up, like, when I graduated in 2011, like, if you got caught with a phone at school at all, like, they were taking it, your parents were coming to get it, you weren't taking it home, your parents were.
And next year they're doing that again. Phones are not allowed at school.
I was like, I feel like they need to get back to that because it's just always there. And like, there's always a distraction. They're not really able to learn. And if they are, they're able to Google every answer. There's
but just thinking about me at 16, if I were at a party and I saw a car on fire with my friends in it.
My first thought wouldn't be to take a picture.
Or video it and send it out to the world.
Yeah. Even if it
blows my mind.
Even if I didn't know it was my friends involved, or it was just a random stranger, like, that would never be my first thought, even back then.
Anyway, so that's that's all I have on that story. I just something to think about. Think about your kids. Think about how they, how far would you go to protect them if they had done the same?
So my next case takes place in New Mexico in 2022, and it was something that was kind of like mind-blowing with the way that the case was handled here as of recently. There was a a Gallup intertribal ceremonial parade. So Indigenous, yes. And so it was just basically a parade to honor, like, Native Americans and Indian tribes, like, that had been in the area, or just going back to, like, the roots of things. When, like, kids were out in the roads, like, dancing, it was like a parade, like, there were chants and stuff going on, and just, like, thousands of families, like, gathered the streets to, like, participate in this parade. It was the 100th year that they had did this. And Jeff Irving, who was only 33 years old, he had been drinking throughout the day. People saw that he was intoxicated. This wasn't his first run-in with alcohol-related things.
Was he part of the parade, or he was just there?
So he was there just watching the parade and a part of like what was happening like on the sidelines. And there's actual videos showing him getting in his SUV and just the parade's going on, and he just gets in like there's no one around him and just starts driving the streets with people in it. Thankfully, nobody was killed at this, but multiple people were hurt. People were screaming everywhere, like warning people, like, get out, we don't know what he's doing. He had 2 passengers in the backseat of his car who were also intoxicated. But when a bystander, who was actually a semi-truck driver, hopped out of his truck and drug him out of his car so he couldn't continue to drive and hurt more people.
What a hero.
So courageous. And he still continued to go. He tried fighting with police to...
when was this?
2022. So honestly, not very long ago. But it's going to end up making you mind blown at what is happening with his case now. So this man who drove his SUV while drunk through a crowded parade in Gallup, New Mexico, it was August of 2022. He ended up injuring more than a dozen people, will no longer spend any more time in jail.
Wow.
So he was sentenced to 6.5 years. That was it. Now, again, he didn't kill anyone, but he injured over a dozen people and traumatized
it's just
thousands.
Fortunate he didn't kill anybody.
Yes. So he ended up pleading no contest to 2 counts of great bodily harm and 2 counts of aggravated DWI in February. He faced up to 6.5 years behind bars, but the judge on that case sentenced him to 6.5 years. But he ended up suspending that whole sentence in lieu of 5 years in probation. So he only served like 2 years in jail. And when he went back to court, they ended up granting him probation for only 5 years and just letting him go free.
I wonder why they can't add like some treatment program on top of that, because he clearly has an issue with alcohol, that he would be that way.
And he was still young too, like 33. He still has a lot ahead of him, and he was still at the point where he knew right from wrong. The people in the back of his car
he was
also
not
knew
an
right
affluential
from wrong.
teen.
He was 3 times over the legal limit.
Wow.
He can be heard slurring in the back of the cop car. Like, it was obvious that he was drunk.
Well, and that's a lesser of 2 evils. It was he so drunk, or was he so evil? Like that is that's
and
so
I oftentimes
wrong.
think that with my own crash, and like the person that killed my family, she was also 3 times over the legal limit. And I tell my husband all the time, like, I feel like for my peace of mind, I would like to order a breathalyzer and just know what that feels in your body, because I do feel like I have made it to a point to forgive her directly, because I do feel in my heart she didn't know what she was intentionally doing in the moment, but she knew before she got to that point what could happen, because she was a repeat offender. So I don't know, I do find that it would be interesting to just know how it would feel at that limit
too, because that whole process, I would be so scared if I had one. I would be so scared of getting another, or even if I wasn't scared, that's a lot of money. Why waste that money when you could use it for something better?
Well, like, even like with this, when they were in court and it was like his probation hearing, he ended up having like bystanders, like witnesses that gave statements like at court telling him, your tire was coming directly at me, my midline right here, and my daughter pulled me over. I fell over this way. Other than that, I probably would have had multiple injuries, or better yet, ended up dead.
I can't believe nobody was killed. That's crazy.
I know. I think that it just went because you can see his car in the video just parked, and there's people surrounding it. And he does like a U-turn in this road and just starts barreling through. And if people didn't have time to see him basically turn his car around to start driving, they wouldn't have been able to alert anyone else. People were just running and screaming and scrambling.
I'm sure.
Like, they were petrified. The judge ended up saying that I'm going to suspend all that time, giving credit for time served for the amount he's been in jail already. His case originally had 21 counts against him, but he pled down to 4, and he was sentenced, or he was in jail for a total of 612 days. So it just infuriates me.
2 years.
2 years, and he's back at it with probation, and who knows if he'll do it again or he won't, or what will happen.
Yeah, I wonder if we could do. So Missouri has
he was a multiple offender, so this was not his first DWI. Okay. It was not. He had multiple reckless driving charges, multiple speeding.
Then he should have been in jail for a long time.
And that's where we're at. And that was in New Mexico. So just something that should have been a joyous occasion was something that petrified people. And
and they have PTSD, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Is the parade still going on? Do you know?
They still have it. I looked up TikTok just to see if things had changed. And it seems like they still do the same thing and they still celebrate. But it was just ironic that was on their 100th year celebration. That was like one of the first times that something was that tragically happened. It was just like a joyous occasion for people to come together, and that moment was soured because people couldn't choose to be responsible.
A lot of things we ruin for ourselves because we are so stupid.
I mean,
we can't handle
something so simple.
Well, no, we sometimes can't handle our own freedoms. Like just thinking like all the barricades at Times Square, those are there for a reason on New Year's Eve, for the countdown. And I'm sure that if they don't have barricades, that's something that they will have eventually. But
this is totally different, but not really, because it just shows like how much one thing can affect so many others. Like when the Kansas City Chiefs won and there was like gunshots that were heard, like that ruined that celebration. And so when they came back again and the city could have celebrated again, they were too scared to celebrate, because
that's what I mean. We are so stupid that we take away so many fun things from ourselves because we don't know how to act.
Yeah. And we're like in a day and age, especially with drinking and driving and technology at our fingertips, like you can call literally anyone at any time from any place for a ride. And if you don't have someone, there's so many rideshare programs now that would help you. And a simple Facebook post would have somebody coming to whatever bar or restaurant or venue you were at to pick you up. Like,
I agree.
It just, I don't know. I'll never understand.
No, and that's good that you don't. I think, though, that there's a mental block with the Ubers and ride shares that we have to get over somehow. And I know that you have paid a lot of money for them. I have paid, I have not. My sister has paid a lot of money for them. I honestly have not drank hardly anything since Grace because I just don't.
It's not really my thing to do, but even if I drink one, I can't morally get in the car. Like I could drink one and I feel normal, but I would never allow
because
myself.
It's in your mind. Now it's in your mind.
I would never allow myself.
You know it could happen. But what I'm thinking is, as expensive as they are, there has got to be some way of more companies sponsoring, for any night of the week, not New Year's. Obviously, that's helpful. Yeah, but just random nights, because I think that would help people use them if you took the cost away from them or made them more reasonable. Like I think with DoorDash, that's a different thing. You're choosing to have somebody deliver it. So if you want to pay a lot for it, then go do that. With this, because it's a matter of public safety, I just wish that more companies would sponsor it, because you're not going to, those drivers still need to be paid. They're doing it because they need to make the money. So I'm not saying take money away from the drivers at all. I'm just saying, I wonder if there's some way that we could talk to,
I've tried reaching out to the major rideshare programs before just to get sponsorship for the documentary or just get some sort of discount code, and I haven't had the opportunity to get a reply back. So if anyone has a connection, that would be incredible, because you see all the time that there's discount codes or whatever, and I feel like that would be really cool. But also having a cultural shift, like a mindset shift around using rideshare, because when I mentioned in previous episodes of that Valentine's Day when we were choosing to spend a ridiculous amount for a rideshare, it still felt awkward standing there, just me and my husband, while everyone else went and did what wasn't right. It still felt awkward and embarrassing, even with what I'd been through. I felt like I was being judged, or I was weird for doing the right thing.
There's the argument that would be, well, if you can't afford the Uber, then how are you affording the drinks at the bar?
Yes.
because those are not cheap either. And it's just your choice. Again, going back to choices on what you're choosing to pay for.
Just make a plan before. Like, make a plan. If you only have X, Y, and Z money, then you only have X, Y, and Z money for the drinks and the ride.
And the sober driver is sober. Like, not all the less, not the least drunk person. It's like the actual person that's drank soda, water, whatever, all night long, and not a single drink. Yeah. Because I know that's a thing too. Like, I'll be the DD because I drank less than everybody else.
And back in the Electric Cowboy days, like, I do remember that. Like, there would be people that would come, like acquaintances, and like my husband was like always my sober driver and my friends, but then there would be other people that would show up and they'd be like, well, I drank 4, but now I'm done, I'm just drinking water. But like, people oftentimes don't realize that like it still takes time, even if you're drinking water, to get out of your bloodstream, you know, out of your system. Like, it's a time thing. It's not a water or
you can't eat enough food to soak it up. That's not a thing. While you were talking, we have a mutual friend that we've never met in Montana. Were you thinking of that story?
Go.
So they have a nonprofit called Montana Bar Fairies, which I thought was the funniest name when I first heard it. But the point is, in the next morning, like Sunday mornings, they go out early, and around the bars, the parking lots that are around the bars, they leave like a $5 gift card for a coffee.
I love that.
So it's a little reward for not driving home. And of course, it was founded out of tragedy.
I would love to start doing that.
I know. It's a cute idea. So I think that we have to be more clever and more ahead of the game a little bit. Like, there does need to be, everybody loves rewards. Everybody loves something for free. So I know that up there they have sponsors who help them.
That would be so
they
cool.
have a website where you can donate if you want to, but they also seek sponsorships that pay a certain amount of money, and then they divide it up into that many cards for the night.
Well, like, I went to a girls' night. I'm starting to sound like I drink all the time. I promise I don't ever, hardly. But I went to a girls' night, which I never do. First one probably all year. And mainly because I'm like a social person on like social media, but in real life I have like one friend. Okay.
Well, two. You can count me as a friend.
Thanks. It's a pity vote. I'm joking. But like, I was asked to go. I decided to be nice, and I went. And I didn't plan on drinking. I was just gonna have a few sodas, and then they're like, "But please," and I was like, "Okay." So I decided that I would leave my car and I would be picked up because that's the smart thing to do. But like the next morning when I came back, there were 5 cars in the parking lot, and my heart had never been so happy to see people who left their cars in the parking lot. And I was like, I think I needed to see that there are some people out there that do attend the bar scene that are making smart choices.
Right. Just make sure you're not parked in a place that says no overnight parking, because you'll get towed. Yeah. And then that'll turn into an expensive thing. Right.
Yeah. I did notice one bar that we had Ubered to in the past, a while back, and they wouldn't allow parking up front close to their building, but like they had further back. Yeah. So it's just like something that people would have to be more mindful of.
Right. So. And this has been a long time since I've been at a bar, but I remember that there were some bar, maybe it's Bar and Grills, who the designated driver gets like a free meal or a free appetizers or something. So they again, everybody loves free stuff. So rewards. Everybody loves like a pat on the back. And I think like part of us changing the world, and I think we have very big expectations, but part of that is continuing to be creative and continuing to come up with ideas. And so when we talk about people reaching out to us on the website to ask us questions, we are always open to suggestions too. Like if somebody has an idea of how we could make an impact, or if anybody has a story that they want to be interviewed for,
we would love it.
I promise we would make it like a conversation. We are easy to talk to, and I think hearing other stories than just our story is helpful too, because everybody's story is so absolutely different. Even if somebody lost a 23-year-old daughter named Grace, it would be a different story than my Grace. We have an interview coming up with a local law enforcement officer that I'm looking forward to that's going to be really good, and he is funny, and he talks about how, well, I'll let him share. He did an arrest one day on a younger person that had a DWI that failed the field sobriety test, and his excuse was that his mom had gotten like 5 DWIs, and she was on her way up there to pick him up, and
without her license, with her suspended license, probably. I don't know.
She ended up getting arrested too.
I'm so bad for laughing about that.
No, I would have never done this before because I didn't think they were that interesting. But since Grace, I have started watching the police TikToks where they arrest DWI, or they arrest people for drinking and driving.
Those are stuck in Brett's feed, so he may not listen to our podcast, but man, it's all over his.
I will say, I never used to have trouble sleeping since before Grace.
Same.
But after some nights I just can't, no matter how exhausted I am. And so
I'm like, can this be a NyQuil night, please?
I know. But instead, because if I did that, because somebody told me at the beginning, because they didn't want to take anything. Yeah. So they said, take Benadryl and you'll sleep. So I tried it a couple times. It really, honestly,
I'm so antsy with
it didn't knock me out.
It doesn't do it.
It did. And I had so much anxiety anyway. I do think that I felt more anxious because of it. So I started watching TikToks on those nights, because those nights are isolating too, because the whole house is sleeping, and you just think like in my situation, in my situation, I did the preschool thing for 25 years, retired from that, and then became the realtor who's self-employed and makes my own schedule. But when I was deep in grief, I did not have a schedule. I just wanted to remember to wake up. You know, that was my schedule.
Surviving.
Yeah. So on those nights when I was like, well, I can't even look forward to work tomorrow because I don't know what work tomorrow is going to be. I couldn't make myself, So anyway, I started watching those then, and some of them are funny. Some of them make you furious. The police TikToks. What it mainly gives you is a sense of appreciation for the SHIT that they put up with, because people are awful. They're horrible. They're stupid. They have to maintain a level of professionalism, but usually it's to the point that when that person is finally thrown in the cop car, it's almost like you want to cheer.
Like, yes, they did it.
Like the finale of the movie. Thank goodness.
The things that entertain us now. Going back real quick to restaurants, one restaurant that I always get excited to go to, it's not really around here anymore, but Charlie's, they used to have like a plaque by their front door that was reminding people not to drink and drive. I have so many pictures of that, because it was like something that I would just snap every time we would go in and out of there.
I love that.
And then like another idea I've had was just like reminders on bathroom doors of like a poster, even if it's just a printout paper that says don't drink and drive.
Right.
Because sometimes people need that second like reminder.
Yeah.
And if it's on the bathroom door when they're alone and they have time to reflect, even if it's for like 10 seconds while they're going pee.
Yeah. And maybe like, then the number to Lyft or
anything,
Uber, or like call me. I won't go in the boys' bathroom, but maybe my number would go in the girls' bathroom. I don't think I ever would do that.
I don't think I'd want my number, but having some sort of something to direct them to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just that reminder would be a big deal, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just a thought.
Well, you reeled me in, not to be your friend, but I'm not your petty friend, but you reeled me into this journey by saying that you wanted me to be part of your army.
Yes.
And I use that all the time now, because we are an army, not just the survivors, the victims, but law enforcement, MAD, all the youth programs that are out there.
The people who have chose to change their life around, even if you've had like 4 past DUIs and you don't drink another sip of alcohol, like we are so proud of you, for joining this with us.
We all are a team. And I think that the army analogy is a very perfect, we're arm in arm. So we're always here for listeners. We're always here for stories. If you want to share those with us, if you have suggestions or comments, we'd love to hear those questions. Yeah. And we have an exciting event coming up if you want to talk about that.
So I love gift giving. It's probably one of my love languages. Like if I can spoil you, like you're someone like worth keeping around. So being able to give back to the community and just show what we've been doing to like help make our roads safer has been something that's just good for my soul. So our Beyond the Headlights documentary premiere is finally on the calendar. It took lots of emails and phone calls to finally secure a location, but we did it.
Yeah.
So save the date for August 6th, 2025 from 5 to 8 p.m. We will be premiering our documentary that shares more about our stories at Marcus Theater in Dardenne Prairie. It's kind of like Lake St. Louis O'Fallon area. Our documentary is raw, real, and rooted in love, loss, and the fight to end drunk driving. And we'll be having some pretty cool guests. I can't talk. Some pretty cool guests joining us as well.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
During that, we'll also have swag bags for anyone who attends. We're going to be doing a school supplies backpack drive.
Yeah.
I've did some of these in the past. I want to break a 500 backpack
that's
record.
A good goal. You've not talked about a goal.
That's brand new. I'm very goal driven, but I just randomly thought 500 filled backpacks would be amazing. I think my max before has been 300.
Okay.
So 500 would be really cool.
Sounds good.
We're in the works of setting up Amazon wish list, Walmart wish list, P.O. box, and all of the things, so we can see the impact we can truly have on the community in honor of Parker, Gracie, and Corey. So
I'm excited. I can't wait for it.
We only have a limited number of tickets, and it's one of the biggest theater rooms, and I just can't wait to stand in front of that big screen and just look and see every seat filled, and how powerful that's going to be.
Well, and that will be a very visual representation of our Army. You know, we will have some survivors there that have that we've locked arms with from MAD. And people that we don't know about yet, I'm sure will be there, and we don't know their stories.
And just random people who have just supported us throughout the years in the community, because, there could be simple times of, I just ran into Walmart the other day, and a lady's like, "Are you doing a backpack supply drive again? Your Destiny, right?" And I was like, "I am, and I am, yes," because I used to do stuff like that every year, and then since having kids, I slowed down a bit. But Coraline, the 4-year-old of mine, is going to be thrilled to be able to go to the P.O. box and pick up all of the stuff, and she gets so protective.
I just think it's so. I think I've said this on the podcast before, because of my background in early childhood education, planting those seeds is so important now, and for your kids to see to the giving back and to be a part of that's going to be so impactful in their development, but also to see their whole life this change in the culture of drunk driving. It may not even be a thing when they're adults. They would never consider. Yeah, their generation may never consider doing this.
And I do start to think, it does seem to be a less and a less thing, the different generations.
I hope that it is. And
I don't want it replaced with something else, though,
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun is fun, and we are not against drinking, but
just do so responsibly.
Drinking and driving is actually abuse, I think, alcohol abuse. If you cannot control yourself enough to get home or to have somebody that can take you home, then I consider it abuse. Yeah. So don't do it.
Just have the conversations to make plans ahead of time,
Right.
Yeah.
I just had a funny thought.
I want to hear it.
People obviously are listening to our podcast that know that we're against drunk driving. But what if my last comment, just don't do it, and somebody's listening and they're like, "Oh, okay." I didn't know that's what this was about.
Well, one day we're going to be so cool. We're just going to pop up in a random feed, and they'll be like, "Who are these people? What are they doing?" Not just people that know, love, and trust us.
Yeah, like we've said, my youngest son didn't realize I was doing a podcast, but my older son did say that I have invaded his feed.
Oh, yeah.
And that our documentary, I have not gotten those two right yet. Our podcast has been invading his feed, so I'm very proud of that.
That's so funny.
He doesn't pay attention to it, but
they skip over it. But
he already knows all the stories.
There, so. It's like they were there in real time, and they're tired of listening to us talk now. But not everybody can be.
Right. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Hopefully this gives you hope, encouragement, inspiration, and until next time.
Thank you. We hope today's episode brought you comfort, understanding, and a renewed sense of hope. If you found value in our conversation, please consider sharing this podcast with someone who might benefit from it.
Until next time, hold on to hope, honor the memories of those that you love, and take one step at a time toward healing. You're not alone on this path. Take care and be well.